morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thanks for waiting out the change of schedule. So today I would like you to first begin by imagining that this is your house. If you can see, there's a small house there on that hill. And you wake up one morning to find that a giant crevasse has formed outside your doorstep. And this crevasse crosses your path to town. In town is where you do your grocery shopping. It's where you buy your clothing, where you find all of your resources for your daily life. What are you gonna do? You can't get there anymore. Now imagine you're this mother howler monkey. You have your very precious cargo on your back. You're walking along in the morning, and suddenly you see that this has formed at your front doorstep. This is a pipeline being built through your forest. And, well, you don't really like going down to the ground all that much, so how are you gonna get to the other side? If you were this jaguar, you might say, oh, wow, a pipeline, that looks like a nice path through the forest. I can kind of saunter down, maybe sneak up on some tasty little treats as I go. I think I kind of like this open pathway. But if you were that mother howler monkey, or if you were this capuchin monkey, again, you might not be so excited about this open clearing in the forest. You can see this capuchin monkey is standing on his back legs. He's really uncertain. Coming down on the ground is kind of a dangerous prospect for an arboreal mammal, or an animal that's used to living in the treetops. So let's back up for a minute and talk about how a mother howler monkey could end up with a pipeline at her front doorstep. This is a map of Peru. The colorful background illustrates the diversity of mammals. The similar pattern is true for birds and amphibians, but I'm just focusing on mammals today. You can see the black polygons are fossil fuel blocks that are under contract with the Peruvian government. The purple dots are exploratory wells where drilling was done for fossil fuels. These are just the onshore concessions. I didn't include the offshore concessions. But as you can see, there is very high overlap between these concessions and these exploratory areas, and very diverse areas for mammals. So you can see why this could be a problem for those mammals. Now, when a company takes responsibility for one of these concessions, when they go under contract with the government, it doesn't mean that they're going to clear cut them by any means. But it definitely means that they will engage in a lot of potentially impactful activities, like seismic exploration. They can do exploratory drilling, as I explained in some of those sites. And if they find fossil fuels, they may go ahead and build a pipeline. So here is another example of a pipeline. And I want you to look at this for a second and think about, if you were moving through the treetops, what are you going to do now? You've got to come down to the ground in order to get to the other side. When pipelines like this are built, they don't necessarily take into account what's going on with the forest canopy. They're focusing on getting the pipeline in the right location, clearing that clearing, making sure their vehicles can pass through and that the pipeline can be laid. But what if we talked to a company about a solution? What if we said, can you leave some places where arboreal mammals could continue to cross? Could you leave places where the branches of some pretty large trees connect with the branches of large trees on the other side, where the branches interlace and animals could keep crossing? We could call this a treetop bridge even, maybe a canopy bridge. So we found a company that was willing to do a project like this with us at the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute. We partnered with this company. This was a company willing to understand how to reduce their impacts, investigating different methods for impact reduction. And they were excited about this Canopy Bridge project, about leaving crossing places. So we worked with them for many months on end. We exchanged knowledge about engineering. I learned a lot about different aspects of building a pipeline, and we in turn taught them about natural history of arboreal mammals and other animals. And we looked for places where, when that pipeline was finished being built, this was actually before the pipeline was built. We looked for places where those branches could interconnect and animals could potentially cross from the other side, from one side to the other. In this picture, I'm putting up a sign with one of the people that's working on building the pipeline that says, "Do not cut. Do not cut this tree. We're hoping that it will form a bridge later." Of course, as we were choosing these locations, we couldn't necessarily tell if the branches would connect. But as they became exposed, we could see that. So here you can see a series of 3 machines called side booms lowering this natural gas pipeline into a trench. This pipeline is 16 inches in diameter. It will carry natural gas from the Peruvian Amazon up over the Andes and over to the Pacific, where the natural gas may be loaded on tankers and transported in other ways. So this pipeline is lowered into this trench. The trench is about 2 meters deep. It's buried, and then it's covered over. So when they were building this pipeline, again, we asked them to preserve certain trees that will leave these canopies, these natural canopy bridges. When all was said and done, we had 13 bridges, and we thought, wow, this is great. Okay, now what do we do next? Well, I guess we need to see if animals are actually going to use the bridges. Otherwise, why should the company go to so much trouble to leave them? So we thought, okay, should we put some radio collars on some monkeys? What should we do? Well, maybe we need to get up into those bridges. Maybe that'll be a little easier than doing the radio collars. Or, I don't know, would it? Who knows? So we decided to learn how to climb those trees. This is me with my colleague, Farah Carrasco. We took a Christmas trip to Panama a couple years ago, and we learned how to climb canopy trees. This is a pretty exciting prospect for me, a primatologist who'd never been up into the canopy and never really seen it for myself, seen the world that these animals I'd always stared at from the ground, what kind of world they lived in. And after getting all this great training, well, up we went into the canopy. So here I am, just like that, it was one day to the next. No. So actually on the ground, you can see the pipeline clearing passing through the forest. This is a bridge, obviously. And actually one of those people on the ground is like 6'6" or so. So you can see I was up pretty high. I was at about 100 feet here. And I was going up to put a motion-sensitive camera or a camera trap in the canopy. And camera traps, you probably heard a lot about them by now. They can sense the movement and the body heat of an animal as it passes in front of them, and they take basically an animal selfie. So this way we could monitor all those bridges and every connection within a bridge to see if animals were actually using them. But of course, we also wanted to know if they'd be just as willing to cross on the ground. So we put camera traps on the ground also. Here's an example of a camera trap in a bridge connection. And this is the path that an animal would need to take in order to cross over that bridge connection. And here is the outcome. So that's a group of night monkeys crossing over that bridge. And here's the series of images that I kind of pasted together, and you can see the group crossing here. And that is the wonderful male monkey who carries that heavy baby all over the place, much like my husband is nice enough to do with my heavy baby. So in this next series, this is an emperor tamarin. He's crossing along that bridge. Here's a saddleback tamarin who's a little nervous about the camera. And here's a group of saki monkeys, my personal favorite. They don't really look like monkeys, but indeed they are. They're very fluffy monkeys. And this is a bunch of different individuals. I just pulled the individual pictures of the members of this capuchin monkey group. You can see some of them have yellow dusting on their faces. They've been feeding on the pollen nectar of flowers with a little bit of pollen left on their faces. Here's a mother tamandua who's walking along with her gigantic baby on her back. She also seems to be pregnant, so this mother is working overtime, that's for sure. And here is a kinkajou. He's a little curious about the camera trap, too. He's just come over this bridge. and a group of porcupines. These guys were my nemesis because they like to gnaw on my cameras. As you can see, the camera moving back and forth. Sometimes I would find them all the way open and flooded with water after the porcupines had their fun with the camera. And then finally, a sloth slowly crossing the bridge. So, getting to our question. If we gave the animals an option of crossing through these canopy bridges or crossing on the ground, which would they prefer? Well, over a year of monitoring those 13 bridges, we found that 25 arboreal mammal species use the bridges. That was a pretty exciting number for us. Every time we checked the cameras, it was like Christmas. We'd see something new. On the ground, we saw only 6 of those 25 arboreal mammal species. There were other terrestrial mammals. There were jaguars and everything else, but of course a jaguar is not going to cross up in the canopy. So only 6 of those arboreal mammals were found on the ground. With regard to the number of crossings that we saw, over that year we actually saw over 3,000 crossings in our over 1 million camera trap images that we went through one by one. And so that was pretty exciting, 3,000 crossings. How about on the ground? Just 16 crossings on the ground by arboreal mammals. So what do you think? It seems like they're pretty popular, those bridges. And what was really cool is that when we started to look at the individual animals that crossed those bridges, we counted, conservatively actually, over 150 different individual animals crossing the bridges in that year. So this project, I think, is a really optimistic story about partnering with a corporation that's interested in doing things in a better way. And we're excited to report that there are a number of other projects, pipeline projects in the Peruvian Amazon right now that are incorporating canopy bridges into their pipeline designs. And the Peruvian government has been very excited about our results, and we're optimistic that they will make canopy bridges part of legislation in all pipelines that are built in the Peruvian Amazon. So with that, I'd like to take you back to the first image and ask you if you have, and tell you, I guess, if you have a crevasse in your front yard, well, maybe consider building a bridge. And finally, I just want to give a shout out to Evan Keeling, who made these comics about our project. He's got a booth out in the atrium area, and it's a great way to share your project with different groups of people. Thank you very much.